The Maliki thing is something I must say, I hold it. There's certain things in life that they've served a joy for me. I don't know when I say joy, I don't even know. It's ineffable almost to explain why. Obviously, there must be reasons, but I think we just have a connection. One of those things is definitely the Medinan school, or AKA the Maliki method. It served an inextricable emotional, spiritual bond with me that it's not that we can't apply rationality to it, but I just don't feel it's the realm of rationality. What I mean by that is, you know, I'll tell you who speaks about this. I don't know if you guys come across the works of Antonio Damasio, and if not, you should check him out. He's a lead kind of neuroscientist, leading a neuroscientist in the world. But he has this whole thing, and he has his book as well. What's his? God, he'll come to me. His title. It's really, in fact, you know what? Let me put it up. His book is let's see. That's it. Descartes' Error. Descartes. He's got more than one book, but Descartes' Error. It's really fascinating because you see, Antonio Damasio, what he's highlighting is and I'm coming to understand this more and more, and really coming to accept it, or accept isn't the word, realize it. And that is that we are feeling creatures who think, not the other way around. We are not thinking creatures who feel. इसमें कुछ गहरा है. There's depth to that and profundity. Although rationality, it's the pride and joy of human accomplishment, unquestioned, and rightly so. We are with our aql what nothing can. I mean, we surpass everything because of our aql. Let's put it like that. There's no, it's not might. Humans can't even take on a dog. We can't. Arguably, maybe some cats. This is a shout out to my friend Madge, if he's listening. He has absolute cat phobia. I don't think he likes me mentioning it, but so it's only our aql. So at times we maybe in an enjoyable delusion. Because those of you, I don't know if you guys have caught our book discussion of last month. So the book we covered was Don Quixote's. I mean, it was Don Quixote. It was Miguel de Cervantes' novel on Don Quixote. So check it out if you haven't. And that's where you get the English term quixotic, because quixotic is from Quixote, or with an X, obviously Spanish. So right, but in there we had this discussion on delusions, and are delusions always bad? And that's a fascinating talk. Check that out, people, if you haven't. It's our book lounge book of the month for last month. This month's book, on a side note, is this The Courage to be Disliked. It's by, I don't know, Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. I tried to do a little Japanese accent there. But it's about how to free yourself, change your life, and achieve real happiness based on Adlerian psychology and consciousness. So it's really interesting. So far, I haven't really read much. Believe it or not, I'm actually having Layla read aloud just to practice her reading. So she's having to read all these terms like Adlerian psychology and all this kind of psychoanalysis and all this stuff. Anyway, I digress. So delusions, we as humans, we think that we are by default rational creatures, by default, and we are thinking creatures by default. And I think there's some confusion when people take Descartes' cogito ergo sum, and it's translated as I think, therefore I am. But think here, cogito isn't in that sense, as in the English think. Because when we use think in the English sense, we're thinking of it imaginatively, like, oh, I think about things. Cogito there is the fundamental, the irreducible conscious awareness of cognition. That's what he means. That the fact that like, if in my mind I doubt everything, the fact that my mind is speaking, I can't doubt that. Because to doubt is for it to act. So that's Descartes' thing. But anyway, the point being that we think often we are thinking creatures, but really, and people like Freud were obviously onto this, that we are not as rational as we think we are. And even though we are rational, we are people of reason, we are people of understanding, we are people of cognition and concepts, and but by default we are creatures with emotions. We are creatures with emotions, and that emotional brain, because you don't just think with your, I mean, you don't just feel with your brain. There's an entire central nervous system coming down, virtually connected to, not virtually, actually connected to every point of your body, ultimately speaking. So we feel all over our body. So we feel in the gut, and there's neurons in the gut. We feel, people feel in the lungs. People feel when they feel terrified. What is terrified? It is the heart racing. It is gasping for breath. It is a feeling in the body. It's not a rational computation. It's not like, oh, I'm calculating fear, or even joy, or even we feel excited. The blood rushes. We feel, you see, it's a physiological process, interplay with the brain. So it's not just the brain. The brain, if it was just in a jar, it couldn't really do these things. It needs to play with the rest, have an interplay with the rest of the body. So we by default are creatures from an evolutionary standpoint, and how Allah has created us, you see, with feelings. And if you think about it, Allah says um, that أخرجكم من بطون أمهاتكم وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار. You see, Sama' wal Absar first. He created for you vision and hearing, because with that, the sensation and the experience. What af'ida? Then cognition. You see. So, and that's actually an interesting verse, because أخرجكم من بطون أمهاتكم وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة. No, that's قليلا ما تشكرون. But there's another verse that أخرجكم من بطون أمهاتكم لا oh, it is the verse, sorry, it's before. لا تعلمون شيئا, that you had no ilm when you were born, but you had a priori faculties, like you could touch, and as a kid, and you obviously your sight is initially a bit blurred as a baby, but you can still see and you can hear, you see. So, and in fact, that's the primary fears that a baby has, that we all have by default, is the fear of sounds, like like a big bang. This is inherent in all of us, regard, like it's not learnt. Two fears that we generally just have without being taught as human babies. Can anybody guess what they are? Let's see. I've given one away. Let's see. One of them is, as I've said, the fear of loud noises. Okay. So that's a fear we have within our fitra as insan. And yes, Omar, you said it, but not similarly, the fear of falling. Allah. That's a beautiful metaphor in itself. Just think about that. Take a moment. In our fitra, noise, insan's never ending quest to escape this kind of unbearable noise. And second, the fall, fear of falling, fall from grace. Allah, Allah. सोचने की बात, something to think about. Insan's fall, fear of falling. So they tested babies, and they've done many tests where they'll have they'll have a dip, let's say in the ground, but they'll have a glass sheet all over, like a reinforced see-through sheet all over, so you couldn't fall into the hole. But the baby would come crawling when it reaches that point where let's say there's a drop. The baby won't cross it. It'll just stand there. I mean, it'll just crawl or whatever, sit there, because it has an inherent fear of falling. So, okay, let's come back to what I was saying, that it's fascinating that we as human beings, we think we are creatures of reason, but we are actually creatures of feeling who have the ability to think. That's important. Remember that, because that will come very useful in life and in understanding so many things. Because when people think sometimes, why can't people just act rationally? Because you're misunderstanding their nature. They were never rational to begin with. Freud obviously understood that, as did his nephew, what is it? Bernays. Um, and the father of propaganda. But keeping all this in mind, let's move forward with today's look at this, the fear of falling in love. What a height to fall from, huh? Allah, Allah. गुजर तो जाएगी तेरे बगैर भी, लेकिन बहुत उदास, बहुत बेकरार गुजरेगी. Allah, Allah. He says that life, it will still get by even without you, but it will surely be depressing and very unsettling. Allah, Allah.